Lesson 6, Configuring File System Backups. This is Lesson 6 of Lesson 9. In the lesson's topics and objectives, we'll take a look at Introduction to Backup Policies. We'll explain how data protection relates to a policy. Configuring file system backup policies, we will utilize the Policy Configuration Wizard to create our policies. When our policies are created, we'll take a look at viewing and editing those policies. Introduction to Backup Policies. So what is your backup plan? Take a look at a few of these questions to come up with what your backup plan might be. What kinds of clients do you have? What kind of storage do you have? Where are your media servers located? How long do your backups take to run? How quickly do you need your restores of your data? Where do you want to keep your backup jobs? When does your backups actually need to run? These are just a few of the questions to get your thoughts around planning how your backup strategies will function. Let's take a look at the NetBackup policies. The policies basically provide your answers. We have 4 tabs that run across the top of the policies, from attributes to schedules to clients to backup selections. Think of your attributes as your how and where your backup jobs are going to go. Your schedules are when you want those backup jobs to at least start and be initiated. The clients are the who. Who are you going to be backing up? And your backup selections are your what. What data, directory, file will get backed up. Let's take a look at configuring file system backup policies. We are going to utilize the wizard to do this. The configuration methods are the Policy Configuration Wizard, the Administration Console, and then the command line. Creating a policy using the wizard. Again, we will highlight the master server and the tree view, and on the right-hand side of the screen, we will be presented with all of the wizards. You can scroll down to till you get to create a policy. The first splash screen on creating the policy wizard is you need to choose which type of policy you want to create. We're going to stick with your basic policy for file system backups and database. We'll select Next. You'll enter in the name of your policy and you'll choose which type, the policy type for this. It's extremely critical that you have a plan ahead when you do your policy creation wizard. You will need to know what type of clients. In this case, we're choosing MS Windows, which means to be that all of the clients that we want to back up in this policy must reside under Windows. If you have any Unix clients, you'll have to add them to get a different policy. Next, you can choose the clients that will be in that policy. You can select the Add button to add those policies. You can select Next. By selecting the Files options, you can click the Add button to select any files or folders that you want part of that policy. Here we're browsing for the files. Once you select the files that you're looking for, you can select OK, and that file listing will show up on your wizard screen. The backup types. This is the type of schedule you're going to associate this with. We have full backups and we have incremental backups. In NetBackup, we have 2 different types of incremental backups. We have differential and we have cumulative. Keep in mind your differentials are the deltas, anything from a last differential, cumulative, or full. Your cumulative backups will go all the way back to a full. By default, full backups and differential incrementals are automatically selected. You do get the option to do user backups as well. It's not one of the defaults. We'll select Next. On the Next, we decide on the frequency and retention. As far as the full retention, the default here is a 1-week parameter. We want to decide how long we will hang on to those backups. The default is 2 weeks. You also get to choose the incremental because the incremental was also selected on your schedule. So you will choose how often you want to accomplish differential backups and how long you want to retain onto the metadata for those as well. We'll select Next. Here we have our start window. NetBackup works a little bit differently than other backup programs, and in that we have a start window. The start window indicates when we allow that job to start. The This is not the time frame on when the job has to start and finish, only when the job needs to be initiated. So even if you had a 2-hour start window, that just means that this job has to start within that 2-hour time frame. That job can take an hour, that job can take 2 days, as long as it starts in that start window. This is something to keep in mind when planning your backups. The default here is for off hours. Typically backups are done during off hours. However, you do get the option in the wizard to do working hours all day, or you can customize your schedule. We'll leave it at the defaults and select Next. We're presented with the Finish screen. Let's take a look at viewing and editing a policy. So here we can see our admin console. Underneath the NetBackup management, we've selected policies in the tree view, and you can see one of the policies that we created. It's called small files _to_ tape. You can see all the different components of that policy. To take a greater granular detail look at this, we will right-click on the small files to tape policy. We'll right-click, choose change, and we're presented with all the information that we just ran through from the policy creation wizard. The first tab, here's our policy type. Here's your MS Windows option. The basic policy type on here we have between standard and MS Windows. The standard are basically for all Unix clients and any Novell network clients. On MS Windows, it's any of your Windows 2003, 2008, XP, Vista, or Windows 7. The next option in the Attributes tab is the Where. This is where you're going to be sending your backup jobs to. So once you've created your storage units or your storage unit groups, from the Policy Storage section, you will be able to choose a specific storage unit or storage unit group. The default is any available. If you choose a tape-based storage unit or you choose any available, you will need to select a volume pool. The default volume pool is NetBackup. In an earlier lesson, we learned about creating storage units and volume pools. Underneath the Schedules tab, these are the two schedules we set up. We set up a full schedule and we set up a differential schedule. You can highlight any one of these and select properties to view greater detail. In the full schedule, there contains 3 tabs: Attributes, the Start window, and the Exclude dates. In the Attributes, it contains options on where you want to send your backup jobs to. You can overwrite the Attributes tab of the policy on specific schedules. So if you want a full backup to be sent to disk and differential backups to be sent to tape, you can set that up in this window. This window also contains information about the retention period. The retention period is the one on how long you want NetBackup to track that metadata. The default is 2 weeks. The different types of backups. Let's cover this. Underneath the full, obviously the full will back up everything. We have 2 different types of our incrementals. Again, cumulative and differential. This is a really good diagram describing how differential versus cumulative works. If you can see on the bottom, the differential is going to back up anything since a differential, even any full or cumulative. A cumulative backup job will gather everything since the last full. It's a good idea for planning your backups to possibly trying to squeeze in a cumulative sometime throughout the week as opposed to differentials. Next, we're going to take a look at the Schedule dialog box on the Start window. On here you can see that you can edit the Start window. Again, this is when the job has scheduled time to actually start. It may not necessarily kick off on the very first hour that it is due. It all depends on the resources that are available for that backup job. Let's take a look at the impact on our Start window duration. So in this particular scenario, we actually have 5 clients. We've created a Start window that is set aside for 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. Now technically, once this job gets initiated, it goes into the activity monitor. From the activity monitor, it might be queued. If resources are not available, there's no way that the start window guarantees that first job will kick off at 9 p.m. As we can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the very first client is not initiated until 9:45. Let's say, given the fact that this job takes roughly an hour to complete, the next client is not able to utilize those resources until 10:45. The third client doesn't get to go active until 11:45. And once again, the fourth client is now able to do its backup job at 12:45. Notice that while that fourth client is doing its backup job, the window closes at 1 o'clock. Just because the window closes, this client will still continue to finish its job. Now for client number 5, even though it was queued and waiting for resources to run, it will finally fail because the time frame on the start window has lapsed. By the time client 5 gets to run, it's 1:45 and past its 1 o'clock window to be able to start. This job will finish in a status code 196. Let's take a look at exclude dates. Exclude dates in the schedule window. On here, you can actually select specific dates that under no circumstances you want a backup job to run. All you need to do is click on the dates in the calendar. And even if there is a start window, the backup jobs will not run on those days. Back to the attributes on the schedule window. There are two different types of schedules NetBackup offers. One is frequency-based and one is calendar-based. The default for NetBackup is to do frequency-based backups. As far as frequency is concerned, the default is every week. If you want calendar-based, you can pick and choose which days of the week, which days of the month that you want backup jobs to run. Notice that once we selected calendar-based, we have another tab at the top. It's called Calendar Schedule. The calendar schedule has 3 different options for configuring the calendar. There are specific days, reoccurring days of the week, and reoccurring days of the month. As you can see from the reoccurring days of the week, you can choose, do you want the first Friday, the third Friday, the last day of the month? There are options in here for you to select. Once you pick those options, the 3-month calendar at the top of the window will choose the check marks, the green check marks. The exclude dates will show up with the little red not symbol. Lastly, we have reoccurring days of the month. If you know you want specific days of the month to have a backup job being initiated, then you can select those days. Keep in mind that the 15th, such as in this example here, may fall on any one of the days of the week. You can also choose to have the last day of the month. Let's take a look at the attributes section of the schedule. Here we have the retention. There are different ways that you can change the retention. In here we're showing in the master server host properties, if you open up that, it's about the 3rd option down is the retention period. In here you can see all the different retention periods and that have associated retention levels. The 3rd column in shows a schedule count. If you need to change one of the default retention periods, it is wise to choose one with a 0 schedule count or a minimal schedule count. In the one that we've selected here, it is a retention level of 1. The period is a 2-week time frame, and we can see the schedule count is set to 22. If you look at the bottom portion of the window, NetBackup will actually display every single policy that is associated with that retention period. So you can see the impact of changing this particular 2-week retention period would impact 22 different schedules in your NetBackup environment. Be cautious on changing the retention periods. Let's close out of that window and get back into the Change Policy area. So on the Clients tab, we can see here you can easily add or delete clients per that policy. The policy dialog box also shows you all of the backup selections. On the backup selections, these are going to be the directories and the files that you want to back up for the clients that were listed. About our backup selections. The backup selections are going to identify those files or directories to be backed up. They're going to identify the clients in the policy, but all the files don't have to exist for every single client. At least one of the directories or files need to be presented for each one of the clients. The backup selections are not affected by the user backups and user archives. We also have something called exclude and include lists. These reside on each client. So even if you have a backup policy, it'll take that information into consideration, send that over to the client, and then the client side of the application will apply any exclude list that it has or include lists to re-include files for that backup job. Unix client backup selections, there's some guidelines around this. You can set that up either on the administration console or using the command line BP PL include. Use only one path per line item with a maximum of 1023 characters, and all of the backup selections must start with the slash. As far as the wild characters are considered, it takes any one of the following on the slide. As far as Windows clients are concerned, you can still use the administration console to set this up or command line. It does take the same max path length of 1023 characters, and all the path must be in absolute format. The wild characters for this are the asterisk and the question mark. Our backup selection list directives. NetBackup uses directives to be able to back up some of your clients. You can use the all local drives directive. This works for Unix and for Windows. The all local drives directive for Windows basically goes off of any one of the drives, the volumes that you have on a Windows box. On Unix, it's basically any mount point for Unix systems. So be cautious on using the all local drives directive on Unix unless, of course, you want a separate job to be initiated for each one of the mount points. You have the opportunity to back up system state and shadow copy components as directives on Windows systems. The all local drives directive will automatically include the system state and shadow copy components when that is selected. Some common backup policy issues. The most common issue for schedules is misdefined schedules. Basically, administrators not understanding how NetBackup schedules function. Again, it is a start window. It's not a complete window. There's no way to tell NetBackup when you absolutely have to have that job finish. NetBackup will continue to run that backup job for however long that it takes. As far as client issues are concerned, there's incorrect policy type. You chose an MS Windows policy type when you're backing up Unix clients. Sometimes you can actually get the backup job to run, but the restore may not be successful. If the client software is not installed, you can actually set up policies with client host names even if the client does not have NetBackup client software located on it. If there's client connection issues, it's very good to test whether or not you can actually connect to the client and the client can actually communicate with the media server and the master server. The backup selections issues. If you've accidentally entered in the wrong path on the backup selections of a policy, or you'll get a status code 71 if none of the files in that files list exist for that client. Lesson summary. So in here we took a look at talking about what backup policies are. We also showed you how to create a backup policy using the policy configuration wizard. When we were done configuring the policy in the configuration wizard, we took a look at the intricate parts of the policy, from attributes to clients to schedules to backup selections.